Welcome to Movie Story, where we bring your favorite films to life with thrilling recaps and deep dives. We begin with the story of Lindy Lewis, who had a difficult upbringing due to both of her parents' lack of attention. Her trauma worsened over time, and she now suffers from intermittent explosive disorder. She may erupt in rage at the slightest provocation. Despite multiple failed treatments and a tour in the military aimed at helping her channel her wrath, her health did not improve. Dr. Munchin, her psychiatrist, then devised a treatment plan for her. He gave her an electric shock vest, which she uses to control her urges and keep herself from getting into fights. Lindy goes on a date with a boy named Justin on the current day in an attempt to live a regular life. She considers leaving at the last minute, but decides to give it a shot because he appears to be a nice guy to spend time with. During their chat, a waiter continually refuses the meals Justin requested, infuriating Lindy, but she manages to keep her cool. Lindy, on the other hand, overhears the waitress making fun of Justin while using the restroom. Lindy tries to utilize her invention, but it's ineffective. She cannot control herself and confronts and physically abuses the waitress before fleeing the restaurant without alerting Justin. Lindy takes the device to Dr. Munchin the next morning and requests that he repair it. As he works on it, he inquires about her previous night's date. Lindy believes the date was a flop, since she has once again injured someone. Despite the fact that Dr. Munchin fixes the device, he underlines that the only long-term answer to her problem is to develop a stronger connection with someone and encourages her to pursue a relationship. Lindy walks away without saying anything. Despite having no intentions to contact Justin again, she calls him and requests a meeting. They get along well on their next encounter, and she even discusses her passion for photography with him. They go to Lindy's house, and he tries to kiss her. She feels concerned, however, since she fears she will injure him as well. Justin subsequently discovers her vest, but is unconcerned and spends the night with her. Lindy receives a camera from Justin the next morning. She is moved by his thoughtful gift and expresses her gratitude. She reluctantly discusses her disorder with him when he inquires about her medical equipment. She urges that he stay longer, but he must return to his office as an accountant. Before leaving, he invites her to eat at his residence. Lindy is overjoyed by this unexpected connection and expresses her joy to Dr. Munchin. She believes that because she did not use her gadget the night before, this relationship may not necessitate it. She spends the day snapping shots with her new camera. After visiting the doctor, as she is getting ready for dinner, she receives a message from Justin informing her that he may be late. When she contacts him, Detective Vickers informs her that Justin has been murdered. Lindy goes to the police station, where Vickers and Detective Nian notify her that her boyfriend's lifeless body was discovered in a skip. She feels they aren't paying enough attention to the matter and decides to investigate on her own. She attends Justin's funeral, mourning his death and remembering the brief time they shared. She meets Dr. Munchin again, this time unable to manage her emotions, and he prescribes sedatives to help her calm down. When she wakes up, she tells him about Justin and her suspicions that his lone client, Barry, was involved in the murder. Dr. Munchin attempts to persuade her to let the police handle it, but Lindy is adamant about taking matters into her own hands. Despite his attempts to stop her, Lindy goes ahead with her plan and leaves the clinic after delivering a threat. Despite his fears that she would injure someone, she contacts Detective Vickers and requests that he come to her residence. She slips into the building as he leaves, grabbing Justin's possessions from the evidence room. She gets Justin's address out of his wallet and goes to his flat to look for clues. Vickers calls her while she is searching, expressing his displeasure with her behavior. He informs her that his partner wishes to arrest her, but he gives her a second chance, saying that Nian is on her way. Lindy rushes out of the flat and runs into Nian at the door. Nian charges her with murder and plans to take her to the police station. Because Vickers is still on the phone, Lindy shares the phone with Nian and runs after beating her. She snatches Justin's McLaren and speeds away from the parking lot. Lindy is able to flee after Nian and Vickers are involved in an accident. She goes to a cell phone store the next morning and begs the manager to connect her with a hacker. Lindy requests that she break into Justin's phone, and the manager introduces her to Andy. Andy wonders if her lover was a drug dealer while conducting a check because he had erased all information from the phone. Lindy explains that he was only an accountant. The last 6 calls Justin received were all from an arms dealer named Barry Crisari, whom Lindy believes was Justin's sole client, although he hadn't revealed his occupation. Lindy thanks Andy and leaves her with the car key, determined to pursue Barry. When she gets to Barry's place, she discovers that he organizes paid fights. She confronts him about Justin's murder, but he refuses to share any information with her. Barry dares Lindy to a fight with his 3 best men in exchange for the knowledge she seeks, and she agrees. Barry reveals the outcome of the fight and takes her with him. After defeating all 3 of them, Barry's men try to assassinate her in the car. Lindy, on the other hand, fights back and manages to overwhelm them, eventually forcing Barry to tell her what she wants to know. Barry reveals that Justin was murdered by his boss, Gareth Fizzle. He further says that locating Fizzle would be extremely difficult because he is a powerful man, and even the government is unwilling to pursue him. Meanwhile, Detective Nian pays a visit to Vickers in the hospital and warns him of Lindy's history of violence and assault as a result of her anger issues. Lindy appears after Nian has left the room and praises Vickers for his earlier warning. She also informs him that she has located the murderer and requests that he arrest Fizzle. But Vickers says that they cannot act without evidence. When Vickers asks Lindy why she is so anxious to discover Justin's killer, despite the fact that they had only met a few times, she explains that he was the only really nice person she had encountered recently. Vickers, moved by her concern, gives her Fizzle's address, but tells her not to go alone. Nian arrives and attempts to arrest Lindy while they discuss the situation, but she manages to flee once more. She arrives at Fizzle's office building, where Delroy, his security officer, offers to accompany her to his office, but then knocks her down in the lift. He questions her about the purpose of her hunt for Fizzle. She assures him that she is seeking Justin's killer, but she is not a member of Justin's family. Delroy, on the other hand, attempts to spare her but takes her vest and forces her out of the building. Lindy, constantly missing her vest, urges the driver to stop, but when the driver refuses, she strikes him, resulting in an accident. She escapes from the car and flees the scene. After retelling her adventures, she sees Dr. Munchin again and demands that he develop another device. She returns to her flat later, only to find that someone has broken in. She enters through the window and discovers that Fizzle's men have planted a booby trap designed to kill her in an explosion. She takes the device with her after disarming it and plants another bomb in the flat to stage her death. As she walks out of the building, she runs into Vickers, who wants to arrest her for her own safety, but he is distracted as her flat explodes, allowing her to vanish once more. Vickers calls her and attempts to talk her out of going after Fizzle, advising her to let the authorities handle it. Lindy, on the other hand, feels they will not arrest him and dismisses his concerns, continuing with her plan. She makes it to Fizzle's office building, but is apprehended once more by Delroy. Delroy brings her to Fizzle, who admits to murdering Justin and many other innocent people. Lindy is struggling to keep her rage in check. With a hit to the head, Delroy knocks her out. When she wakes up, she is bound to a chair. Lindy escapes and attacks Delroy, forcing him to reveal the location of Fizzle's secret office. She is confronted by other guards, and a battle erupts. Lindy arrives at the workplace after beating the security officers on her approach, only to discover that Fizzle has already been murdered. Before she can comprehend what has occurred, Justin enters the room. Lindy can't believe her eyes after witnessing his burial. Justin explains that he is a CIA agent who used her to reach Fizzle since they didn't want to get involved directly. He reveals that Dr. Munchin had recommended her because he works for them and his research is sponsored. Justin uses an electric shock to torture her, but the equipment no longer works on her because she has become resistant to it. Lindy retaliates by throwing her bag at him before fleeing the building. Not understanding her motive, Justin is caught in an explosion when a bomb detonates, killing him. Lindy confronts Dr. Munchin after fleeing from the building and accuses him of manipulating her for his personal gain. He apologizes and claims he was unaware of Justin's plan. Vickers and Nian arrive to find Lindy pressing Dr. Munchin against the wall as they argue. Initially fearing that she is attempting to murder him, they shoot her in the leg. However, they soon realize that she was handcuffing him in order to turn him in. Vickers admires her determination after transporting her to the hospital, and both of them assist her in covering her tracks. They return her device, which they had confiscated in the ambulance. Vickers asks Lindy out, and she agrees to think about it. Lindy returns to her old flat to collect her stuff after healing from her injuries and being discharged from the hospital. In the closing scene, she is visited by a strange woman who later reveals herself to be Justin's superior. Lindy has been under surveillance for years, according to the woman. They want to use her rage to bring down the bad people. Welcome to Movie Story, where we bring your favorite films to life with thrilling recaps and deep dives. The film starts with Jason, who is the main character in the film. He is having a fight with his parents about the grades that he got at school because they are poor, and the friends he hangs around with are too bad. We then see him somewhere with a fellow student selling to him as crack. That's the same thing his brother Michael used to sell, who later went to jail. After the bell rings, the new teacher, Lila, introduces herself to them as their new English teacher. That evening, after her class, Andrew introduces himself to her, and she is like, "You can call me Lila." Later, she talks to her mom that evening on the phone, and she is like, "Everything is going on well." Back at Jason's home, he gets into an argument with his mom for coming back home late because Jason's mother is scared that he may turn out to be like his brother, Michael. At school, after her class, Jason stays behind and asks for help with the essay assignment, which is about his personal life. Along with the conversation, she asks her students to give essays about their personal lives, which will help her to know each and every one of her students. But in return, Jason asks her, "How about you?" "We don't know you." She asks him, "What do you want to know exactly?" And he then runs out of the classroom. In the process of her running after him, she runs into Sean, who advises her not to waste her time on him because he is damaged goods. Lila insists that she should help him because it is her job to do so, and that he was asking for help with the essay. Sean wishes her good luck with it. The next day, he presents his essay in front of the class, and Lila is impressed with him. After the class, he stays behind, and she tells him that she can see talent and potential in him, and that he can improve his grades in class. That night, Lila is with some papers in her hands, and it seems she is going through a divorce. The following morning, Jason heads to school on his bicycle, and Andrew meets up with Lila. They make an appointment for that night. In class, Jason is distracted. Lila notices his distraction, and at the end of the lesson, she talks to him about it. He tells her it is because of the pressure his parents put on him, so that he does not end up like his brother, Michael. Lila then offers to give him extra classes every day for 30 minutes, and he is happy about it. He then hands in his assignment. That evening, Lila is in a bar with Andrew, and they are having a wonderful time. Somewhere still in the same bar as Jason, watching all of her moves. She gets tired and drunk. Andrew gets her a taxi, and she heads home, though he expected more from her. The next day, during lunchtime, she sees Jason sneaking out of the school premises, and he did not attend her class. She was mad at him for not attending her class, and he promised that he wouldn't do it again. He begged her not to tell anyone about it since it would cause him serious trouble, and she promised that she wouldn't, because it wouldn't help anyone. In this due process, he held her hand in a romantic way, and she pushed him away, claiming that he was just teasing her. That evening, it is raining outside, and she is talking to her mom. Then Jason appears at her door, beaten up badly. She cuts off her mom and attends to him. She then wants to know what happened to him, but he won't tell anything. He instead gets mad, and as he is leaving, she stops him and offers him a ride. On the way home, he tells her to stop somewhere with a beautiful view and attempts to seduce her with a kiss. She resists, gets back in the car, and drives him home. After they have reached, she tells him that between a teacher and student, this won't happen again. Later, he gets out of the car, upset. The next day at school, they all ignore each other. One day, Jason's mom goes through his book as she is cleaning and gets to realize that her son's grades are seriously improving. She gets to him as he is going through Lila's social media pics on his phone and asks him how he is doing it. He tells her it is because of the new teacher at school. She gets curious and at the same time happy because her son had never performed like that before. After some time, Lila and Andrew make out again at the same bar, but he asks too many questions about her previous life, which she doesn't want to talk about because it makes her uncomfortable. Still, Jason is in the same bar that night, and as she goes to the toilet, he follows her. When she gets out of the toilet, she runs into Jason. Some chemistry happens between the two, and she manages to fight it. Back at the table with Andrew, he has ordered more drinks, but she is distracted. She gets an excuse concerning her mom and leaves. Sean happens to be at the same bar, so she joins Andrew instead. At Lila's home, Jason knocks down the door. She knows that it is a bad idea, but still lets him get inside, and both of them have a passionate night. The next day at school, Lila tells Jason, "Whatever happened between us, everything is over now. We should maintain a good, normal friendship." Jason agrees but says that he will first give her a gift, and then things can go back to normal. Later, he requests her to close her eyes and puts a necklace around her neck, where she is very happy. That evening, she talks to her mom about how she has met someone younger. Her mother is happy for her. What she does not tell her is that he is her student. The next day, Jason hides down in her car. They happily go somewhere for a picnic. She talks to him about how she was married before and how her ex was so violent. Jason promises never to hurt her. They take pictures, even though she knows that it is a very bad idea in case someone sees them. But because she is in love, they take the pictures anyway. One day, as Jason's mother is cleaning his room, she goes through his phone and sees the pictures he took. Later, when she goes to see Jason's new teacher at school to thank her for her work, she realizes that she is the one in the pictures with her son, and she gets angry. She tells her to end whatever she thinks she has with her son. Before she leaves, the head of school notices something off with Jason's mom and Lila. Lila says that it was because of a call she had received, but nevertheless, she is happy about her son's grades improving. When Jason gets home that night, he runs into a fight with his mother for what she has done. He tells her that he loves Lila and asks his mother to forget about the age gap. Furiously, he goes out of the house, but somehow his dad tries to defend him. Meanwhile, Lila decides to tell her mom about it on the phone. Her mom gets angry because her daughter could end up in jail. Jason then comes to see her, but she refuses to see him. They run into a fight, and she asks him to get out of her house. A while later, as she is seated on her sofa with a cup of tea, thinking about everything, a note is pushed below her door. When she sees it, it is Jason apologizing and saying how much he loves her. So she opens the door for him. He gives her flowers, and both of them hug each other. Jason suggests that they leave town together, and she starts thinking about the whole thing. Later, as she drives to school, Jason meets up with her in the compound, asking her if she has thought about it. Here, Andrew is somewhere watching them. He sees the way Jason holds Lila's hand and gets jealous because he has been defeated by a student over Lila. That evening, Lila is in the classroom alone when Andrew decides to assault her. Jason finds her in bad condition at her place, and she tells him everything that happened. At school the next day, Jason is still angry about what Andrew did to Lila, so he picks up a fight with him. The police arrest him, and Lila feels guilty as they take him away. At the police station, Jason's mom gets him out while Lila is waiting outside. She wants to talk to him, but his mom won't let her. Jason's mom tells Lila, "Leave my son alone and go back where you came from." Lila says, "I just want to know how he is doing." He doesn't attend the next classes, and this makes Lila feel more guilty. So she calls Andrew to meet with him. She tells him not to press charges against Jason, or else she will also drag him down with her for the assault he committed. She also orders him to resign from the school, which he has to do because he is left with no choice. Later, Jason is allowed back to school, and Lila decides to leave town without Jason, which leaves him in tears. Welcome to Movie Story, where we bring your favorite films to life with thrilling recaps and deep dives. The film starts in 1630 in New England, where an English settler, William, and his family, spouse Catherine, daughter Thomasin, child Caleb, and fraternal twins Mercy and Jonas, are prohibited from a Puritan province over a religious dispute. They then build a farm near a large secluded forest. Now we see that Thomasin is playing peekaboo. After everyone went to bed, did Annette allow herself to release her emotions. Checking Ben's laptop, she discovered he had been searching for photos of Alicia. The next morning, filming was postponed because one of the actors fell ill. Alicia invited Matilda and Ben to have lunch together. Naturally, Ben eagerly accepted her invitation. Annette feels like she's slowly losing her mind, trapped within four walls with a little son. It's all incredibly depressing. Meanwhile, Ben and Matilda were visiting Alicia and were about to watch a movie together. Annette performs her daily tasks on autopilot, inching closer to a nervous breakdown. When Matilda fell asleep on the couch, Alicia smiled and took a group photo. Alicia also shared with Ben that she'd never been lucky with men. Her ex-boyfriend was the one who leaked her explicit video online. It seemed Ben genuinely sympathized with Alicia, but he had his own motives. Ben also opened up, saying his wife stays home all the time and behaves strangely. Seeing a photo of Alicia with Ben online, Annette became furious. At the same time, Lucas's crying continued to drive her insane. Annette left the house and started running, desperate to escape the noise. She then walked back home slowly, once again hearing the relentless crying. Thanking Alicia for a lovely evening, Ben prepared to leave for home with his daughter. They exchanged phone numbers. At home, his wife immediately confronted him with the photo. Ben explained that they were just out for a walk and that journalists must have misinterpreted the situation. That night, Lucas cried again. Ben slept soundly, so Annette had to get up. Holding her son in her arms, she rummaged through her husband's phone and found the photo of him with Alicia and Matilda. The next day, filming resumed. Ben was far more interested in Alicia than in Matilda once again. Alicia suggested taking a walk together. Ben couldn't stop admiring her acting, telling her how much she inspired him. Alicia, in turn, admitted how embarrassed she felt about their photo being circulated in the newspapers. Ben reassured her that it was fine. His wife didn't notice him anyway. They hugged, and Matilda saw it. She was distracted by the assistant director, Emily, who took her to grab a snack. Standing in front of the mirror, Annette applied lipstick and kissed her reflection. She wanted to be like Alicia. On the way home, Ben was texting Alicia while driving. They were openly flirting now, not hiding their mutual attraction. Tomorrow was a day off, but Ben didn't seem very excited about it. Annette mentioned wanting to take Matilda to the set herself on Monday, but Ben was against it. All week, Annette had felt lonely and was hoping these weekends would fix things. In the morning, while Annette was preparing breakfast, Ben received a message from Alicia hinting at spending the weekend together. Annette's mood instantly soured as she realized that her husband's thoughts were consumed by Alicia. However, she tried not to show it for now. During breakfast, Ben announced that he planned to dedicate time to his writing and suggested that Annette take Matilda to the park. Suddenly, Matilda said she wanted pancakes like the ones Alicia made. Annette accused her husband of ruining what little they had left. Not wanting the children to see her cry, Annette went to another room. She couldn't understand why Ben was treating her this way. Calming herself down, she returned to the kitchen and then took the children to the park. She didn't expect to run into her old acquaintance, Esther, also a young mother. Unlike Annette, Esther didn't look tired, and she didn't live in the suburbs, finding it dull there. Esther had heard rumors that Annette and Ben had separated and expressed her happiness for her. None of Annette's friends had ever liked Ben, as he often flirted with other women. Barely holding back her emotions, Annette said that she and Ben had not separated and hurried to leave. In her messages, Alicia kept insisting on meeting. Ben couldn't resist anymore, and after getting ready, was going to go to her. But his plans were interrupted by his wife, who returned early. After dinner, Ben started feeling nauseous. All night, Annette stayed awake, listening to her husband suffer in the bathroom. This meant that Annette would be taking Matilda to the set today. Naturally, she also brought her son along. While the crew prepared, Annette waited in the trailer. Alicia was visibly upset to learn that Ben wouldn't be there today, or so she wrote in her messages. He would have loved to come but was still unwell. Ben also advised Alicia to stay away from Annette, explaining that she was mentally unstable. Seeing Matilda and Alicia hugging made Annette furious. On set, Alicia and Matilda played the roles of mother and daughter so convincingly that it made Annette jealous. Even during breaks, they kept goofing around. The assistant director mentioned that it was always important to Alicia how she looked. That remark made Annette even more furious. To cheer Ben up, Alicia sent him a photo from the set. He was eagerly anticipating their next meeting. Meanwhile, Annette discreetly entered the trailer containing Alicia's personal dressing room. She rummaged through the rival's belongings. Against Ben's advice, Alicia approached Annette to introduce herself. The women seemed to have a polite conversation. When Alicia wished Ben a speedy recovery, Annette found it suspicious, as she hadn't mentioned the husband's illness to anyone at home. She demanded an explanation from Ben. He justified himself by claiming he had told Emily about it. That night, Annette tried to access the husband's phone again, but he had changed the password. Feeling better, Ben returned to the set and saw Alicia hugging another man. Suddenly, he received a message from her, saying there was a surprise waiting for him in Matilda's trailer. At the same time, Ben saw Alicia drive off with a man. Ben hurried to Alicia's trailer, eagerly expecting her, but there he only found her phone with a new explicit video. His thoughts were interrupted by a knock at the door from Emily, who said Matilda was nowhere to be found. Reluctantly, Ben joined the search. It turned out that Matilda had been hiding in the nearby woods all along. The crew had already called Annette, who intended to take her daughter home immediately. Also, Annette was outraged because her husband was not looking after their daughter well, even though that is what he was there for. Seeing her daughter hugging Alicia again, Annette felt a surge of intense jealousy. The whole family drove home in silence. Ben kept texting Alicia. Suddenly, Annette slammed on the brakes, claiming she saw a fawn on the road. All Ben could think about was Alicia. Imagining being alone with her for the first time in years, Ben felt truly alive. He knew he couldn't feel the same way with his wife. Early in the morning, Annette woke the daughter and left, slamming the door. That meant Ben was forced to look after the son. Annette ignored his calls, leaving a note reminding him to feed Lucas. Ben was disappointed he wouldn't get to see Alicia that day on set. Matilda, playing her role, pleaded with her mother, portrayed by Alicia, not to leave her. After a successful scene, everyone applauded and praised Matilda for her performance. Leaving Emily to watch over the girl, Annette approached Alicia and whispered something to her. After spending the entire day with his little son, Ben was exhausted. Annette prepared dinner, applied makeup, and put on a beautiful dress to celebrate Matilda's final day of filming. Suddenly, the doorbell rang. Standing on the doorstep was Alicia with a bottle of wine. It was Annette who had invited her, much to Ben's displeasure. At dinner, the women conversed as if nothing unusual was happening. Ben quickly relaxed as well, though not for long. Matilda mentioned that during filming, she cried for real, recalling the time her father was away for 8 months. To ease the tension at the table, Annette politely suggested that Alicia help her tuck Matilda into bed. Later, Alicia thanked Annette for the opportunity to say goodbye to Matilda, and the women returned to the table. Now that filming was over, Alicia had a choice: leave or stay. Suddenly, an argument broke out between Annette and Ben, which clearly embarrassed Alicia. She hurriedly left, despite Ben's attempts to stop her. He was furious with his wife for humiliating him in front of Alicia. Ben realized that Annette was aware of his feelings for Alicia and announced his intention to divorce. Ben was convinced that Alicia understood him like no one else could. He also regretted all the years wasted with Annette. Leaving his wife behind, Ben followed Alicia and tried calling her. However, the wife answered the phone instead. It turned out that some time ago, she had replaced Alicia's contact in his phone with her own. Ben had been texting his wife all along, completely unaware. Everything else had been his imagination. It was Annette who had poisoned Ben's dinner. She had also been the one in the video in the trailer, disguised as Alicia. Ben had fallen in love with an image he had created himself. In reality, his interactions with Alicia had been nothing more than friendly. Blinded by rage, Ben lost control of the car and got into an accident. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to Movie Story for more amazing movie recaps. Let us know in the comments which movie you'd like us to cover next. Thank you for watching, and see you in the next one.
On a beautiful afternoon, the man returned home from work, as usual. At that moment, his wife was in the kitchen chopping vegetables. As he entered and greeted her, she suddenly turned around and plunged a fruit knife into his stomach. Her eyes were vacant, devoid of any emotion. After committing the act, she calmly lay down on the bed and fell asleep. The couple had always loved each other. So why did the wife suddenly kill her husband? Could there be a deeper conspiracy behind this murder? The main character is a woman named Emily. 4 years ago, her husband was jailed for financial crimes, leading her to suffer from severe depression. Although he has now been released, her condition has not improved. The next day, Emily went to work as usual, but her mood fell to its lowest point. After starting the car, she stepped on the gas and drove straight into the wall. The male lead, Banks, is a psychologist. After learning about Emily's condition, he volunteered to be her primary doctor. Fortunately, Emily only suffered minor injuries to her forehead, and nothing else was seriously wrong. However, her depression had reached the point of suicidal tendencies. Banks advised her to be hospitalized for observation for a period of time, but Emily firmly refused. She believed that her husband had just been released from prison, so she had to be by his side, and what happened today was just an accident. She promised not to let a similar situation happen again. After consulting with the family, Banks agreed to discharge her, but required her to see him for a follow-up within a week. He also prescribed some common antidepressants. A few days later, Emily came for a follow-up appointment as scheduled. Banks noticed that her symptoms could not have appeared in just 1 or 2 days, so he wanted to know if she had been treated by any doctors before. Emily said that 4 years ago, when she was still in Connecticut, she was treated by Dr. Victoria for 9 months, but after moving here, she no longer went for checkups. Realizing that communication between doctors could help improve treatment effectiveness, Banks decided to meet with Dr. Victoria to learn more about the causes of Emily's illness. Dr. Victoria said that Emily had not received recognition from her father since childhood. When she grew up, she finally found someone she loved, but he was unfortunately imprisoned. Not only that, their house and all their assets were confiscated. A series of shocks made Emily unable to bear it, and finally, she suffered from depression. Victoria had previously prescribed some antidepressants for her, but the effect was very limited. Perhaps Emily should try some new drugs, such as Ablixa. At least it could help patients regain confidence. That evening, Emily and her husband were invited to a party. Initially, her husband did not want to take her because people with depression find it difficult to adapt to crowded places. But Emily wanted to try. She needed to learn how to overcome psychological barriers. At the beginning of the party, Emily was still able to communicate normally with everyone. But after a while, she began to feel extremely uncomfortable, so she went to the bar to order a soda. A colleague saw her strangeness and shared her story. Last year, she discovered she had a tumor, which caused her mood to plummet. Under the advice of her doctor, she started using an antidepressant called Ablixa, which was very effective in helping her escape that dark period. But at this time, Emily was no longer in the mood to chat. After finding her husband, she hurriedly left the place. The next day, while waiting for the subway, Emily had another episode. She actually took steps towards the tracks, but fortunately, a police officer on duty pulled her back in time. Emily immediately broke out in a cold sweat because she couldn't control this suicidal behavior and the frequency was increasing. She hurriedly went to see Banks and told him about her condition. Her husband had started working again, and she was trying to keep living, so she didn't want to be bothered by this disease. If common drugs didn't work, she wanted to switch to a new drug. Her colleague had said that Ablixa was very helpful in relieving depression, and it was often advertised on TV, so maybe it could help her. This was not a big problem, and Banks agreed, so he prescribed Ablixa for Emily. That evening, a pharmaceutical company invited 3 psychologists to dinner. The company was researching a new antidepressant and needed professional doctors to be consultants. Because the other 2 didn't have time, Banks took the job. Moreover, the remuneration was very generous, up to $50,000 a year. Perhaps because she was using the new drug, Emily's spirit became very good during that time. She was no longer afraid of her surroundings and could communicate normally with everyone. Martin thought their life had returned to normal, until one night, he was suddenly awakened by loud music. When he went out, he only saw Emily playing music and preparing breakfast. But it was midnight. Were there guests coming to the house? But Emily didn't see Martin at all. After observing more closely, he discovered that his wife was sleepwalking. She had never shown this behavior before. The next morning, Martin immediately took her to see Banks. He said that sleepwalking was one of the side effects of Ablixa. Therefore, Martin wanted to switch to another drug. However, Emily refused. Every day at 3 p.m., her head felt like it was covered by a layer of poisonous fog that prevented her from moving. Since using Ablixa, that feeling had completely disappeared. If she had to go back to the way she was, she would rather change doctors. Banks thought for a moment and said there was still a solution. He prescribed some sleepwalking medication for Emily to support Ablixa, both reducing depression and preventing sleepwalking. Thinking that her condition was under control, he was unprepared for what happened next. The next afternoon, Emily's illness relapsed. She took the subway and forgot to get off at her stop. In previous episodes, Emily didn't dare to go anywhere. After taking the medicine, she went to bed and slept. In the evening, Martin returned home after a busy day. As soon as he entered the door, he saw the gift his wife had left on the sofa. Recently, Emily had been trying to cultivate their relationship. Hearing the sound of cutting vegetables in the kitchen, He hurriedly stepped in and said hello. But unexpectedly, at this moment, Emily turned around and stabbed a fruit knife into his stomach. It turned out that she was sleepwalking again. But this time, it was not just cooking. She stabbed her husband repeatedly until he fell into a pool of blood, then returned to bed and continued sleeping. The next day, the police arrived at the scene. Emily had no idea what had happened. She just woke up and saw her husband lying on the floor in a pool of blood. She was very panicked and called the police immediately. The police inspected the scene. The surveillance camera did not record anyone else coming to the house, and only Emily's fingerprints were in the area. In addition, her feet were covered in blood, so it was very likely that she was the perpetrator. Banks received the notification and rushed over. Emily did not hire a lawyer and only kept mentioning Banks' name. Fully regain her freedom. Banks, however, had one final move left to play. He reminded Emily that while she was legally safe from being retried for her husband's murder, she was still under court-mandated psychiatric supervision. Any signs of instability could result in her being institutionalized again indefinitely. Emily smirked, thinking she had won, but Banks had already planned his next step. He calmly informed her that, as her psychiatrist, he had the authority to declare her mentally unfit at any time. If she tried to escape his grasp or defy his recommendations, she would find herself locked away in the mental hospital for good. This time, with no hope of release. Realizing she was trapped, Emily's confidence wavered. She had played a long and careful game, manipulating everyone around her, but now she was at the mercy of the one person she had underestimated. "You see, Emily," Banks said with a cold smile, "you might have outplayed the legal system, but you didn't outplay me." With no way out, Emily was left with only two choices: comply with Banks's terms or risk losing her freedom forever. And for the first time in her life, she had no control over what happened next. The story ended with Emily walking out of Banks' office, a forced smile on her lips, knowing she was no longer in charge of her own fate.
If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to Movie Story for more amazing movie recaps. Let us know in the comments which movie you'd like us to cover next. Thank you for watching, and see you in the next one. Welcome to Movie Story, where we bring your favorite films to life with thrilling recaps and deep dives. The events of the series begin with Sophie preparing for her first day of work as a manager at a publishing house. Upon her arrival, Sophie meets the CEO, Ronnie, and organizes a meeting with the staff to welcome them. However, the temporary technical employee named Max arrives late for the meeting, disrupting the entire office due to his tardiness. Sophie heads to her office, hears an annoying noise coming from the wall, and discovers it's Max causing the disturbance. She asks him to work outside business hours so that the staff can work peacefully. Later, she holds another meeting with Friedrich, the literary director, and Denise, the public relations manager. Sophie returns home and talks to her husband, Johann, about her first day at the publishing house, explaining that the company needs effort and time to modernize, as they're still using manual systems instead of electronic ones. At bedtime, Sophie goes to the bathroom and watches an exciting movie to relieve her stress. The next day at work, Sophie is in her office as usual when she hears another noise caused by Max. She argues with him and again tells him to work outside the employees' working hours because the noise prevents them from concentrating. Sophie stays late at the publishing house after the staff has left and decides to watch erotic movies because she feels anxious. Max appears to have seen her watching these movies and takes photos of her without her noticing. The next day, Max waits for Sophie outside her office and tells her he knows what she does alone and has documented everything. Max mocks Sophie's actions. As she tries to find information about him, she discovers he is a poor young man and decides to use his poverty to her advantage by offering him money in exchange for deleting the photos from his phone. Max takes advantage of the situation and asks her to invite him to lunch with her. Sophie fulfills Max's request and agrees to have lunch with him. During lunch, Max asks Sophie why she watches erotic movies, but Sophie's friend interrupts them. Max assures Sophie that he has deleted the photos from his phone, but she remains suspicious. She takes his phone with her, and, back at work, feels euphoric at having bested Max. Denise and Friedrich argue about inappropriate conversations on their personal accounts, believing someone has hacked them. They turn to Max, the technical employee, to resolve the issue. However, Max needs his phone, which Sophie still has. Sophie realizes that Max planned the entire situation to get his phone back. She is impressed by Max's cleverness as he successfully retrieves his phone. Sophie then goes to the bathroom, applies lipstick, and emerges, handing the lipstick to Max. She tells him that the color of the lipstick represents her the most and asks how she can retrieve it from him. Max doesn't understand Sophie's actions, but keeps the lipstick. The next day, Max sends Sophie an envelope through the secretary, instructing her to yell at someone other than him. He explains that the game stipulates that whoever has the lipstick can make a demand of the other person, who must fulfill it without objection. Sophie starts looking for an employee to yell at, as Max instructed, but finds only the secretary, who leaves the office without permission. However, the secretary reminds Sophie that she had asked to leave early, unaware that this is part of a game between Max and Sophie. Sophie returns to her office and watches Max joyfully. The following morning, Sophie leaves the publishing house angrily, but collides with a cyclist. They argue, but Max steps in after hearing Sophie's voice. He organizes the scattered papers and returns the lipstick to her, indicating it's now her turn to make a demand of him. That night, Sophie and her husband, Johann, attend a party, but she feels uncomfortable, especially as Johann belittles her in front of his friends. Sophie turns to Max to relieve her stress, initiating her game with him. She messages him, asking him to deliberately create chaos and noise during the next day's meeting at the publishing house. The following day, the employees are surprised when the cleaning staff arrive before the meeting ends, because Max lied to them, saying Sophie had invited them for coffee as a token of appreciation. Thus, Max fulfills Sophie's request. Max meets Sophie in her office and takes her lipstick as a signal that it's now his turn to make a demand. That evening, Max messages Sophie, asking her to come to work early, dressed like a 90s pop singer. Sophie complies, surprising all the staff with her eccentric outfit, except for Max. Sophie thanks Max for succeeding in his task and returns the lipstick, but Max kisses her on the street out of joy for his success. The next day, Sophie visits her daughter Isabella's school and meets the teacher, who says Isabella excels academically, but is introverted and has interests different from her peers. The teacher asks Sophie to address the issue with her daughter. In the days leading up to the book fair, Sophie notices that her room is across from Max's. It's now her turn to make a demand, as she still has the lipstick. She leaves a note on Max's door, asking him to do something that will draw everyone's attention at the book fair. Max turns off all the lights at the event and escapes, fulfilling Sophie's request. He later reappears at the fair, where Sophie congratulates him. She goes to her room and waits for Max, but she hears a noise coming from his room. Looking through the peephole, she sees him standing nervously outside her door. The next day at the press conference, Sophie and Max have lunch with the publishing house staff. Sophie notices Max talking to the secretary and becomes jealous. She whispers in his ear, asking him to make the lunch more exciting, but Max is unsure how to act. He notices the kitchen is empty and decides to lace the desserts with a drug. Max warns Sophie not to eat the candy before carrying out his plan. Everyone eats the desserts greedily. During the press conference, Friedrich and Denise argue, and the entire staff becomes unconscious from the drug, except for Sophie and Max. The next day, Sophie asks Max to go to the pool with her. They enjoy their time together, return to the hotel, and make love for the first time. After the book fair, the staff returns to the publishing house. However, Max doesn't see Sophie and learns she's been working from home for 3 weeks. Feeling distraught, he tries contacting her, but she doesn't respond. Max visits Sophie at her home and confronts her about ignoring him. Sophie admits their relationship was wrong, but feels weak in his presence and starts a new relationship with him. Suddenly, Johan arrives home and notices Max's presence. Sophie lies, saying Max came to fix the dishwasher. Max pretends to repair it, but gets angry and leaves, deciding not to speak to Sophie again. The next day, Sophie goes to the publishing house, apologizes to Max, and he forgives her. He invites her to his shared home, where they spend the day together. Max reveals that his mother doesn't like him because she sees him as a playboy. The following morning, Sophie returns to work. The secretary notices her growing closeness to Max and warns him that she could report Sophie for abusing her position to get close to younger men. Max ignores her comments and waits for an opportunity to talk to Sophie. She offers him the lipstick in exchange for visiting his mother and spending her birthday with her. Max agrees. Back home, Sophie prepares cookies for her daughter, Isabella, but Johan mocks her as usual. Sophie retreats to the bathroom and cries alone, while Max visits his mother and younger brother. His brother asks if he's engaged, and Max claims he's in a relationship with a beautiful woman, showing him Sophie's picture. Max's mother is shocked to see her son involved with an older, married woman with a child. Meanwhile, Johan surprises Sophie by announcing he wants to move to London and asks her to leave her job. Sophie becomes angry, as he didn't consult her opinion. At the publishing house, Sophie informs Ronnie that she plans to move to London with her husband and daughter. Max overhears this, becomes confused, and confronts Sophie in front of the staff. They step outside to talk, and Sophie angrily tells Max that their relationship is madness, not love. She confesses she regrets meeting him, then throws the lipstick away. Sophie assures Max that nothing is left between them. Max is devastated and returns to work, but suddenly collapses. He wakes up and breaks down in tears. Sophie is also heartbroken and hopes for a miracle to reunite with Max. The next day, Johan suggests they go out with friends to ease the tension between them. As usual, Johan belittles Sophie in front of his friends, claiming her father is insane. This time, Sophie stands up to him, replying sharply in front of everyone. She storms into the publishing house, dressed in a bathrobe, and interrupts a meeting where a woman tears up her work contract due to Sophie's actions. Sophie leaves the meeting, and Max follows her. Happiness floods Max's heart as he realizes Sophie didn't move to London because she has fallen in love with him. She defied her husband, Johan, and societal norms, rejecting traditions that oppose a relationship between an older woman and a young man still trying to find his way in life. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to Movie Story for more amazing movie recaps. Let us know in the comments which movie you'd like us to cover next. Thank you for watching, and see you in the next one. Welcome to Movie Story, where we bring your favorite films to life with thrilling recaps and deep dives.
The movie begins with a scene showing how an incident wipes out most of the population and destroys all resources. After the disaster, people turn to eating the dead just to survive, and slowly, things go from bad to worse. 10 years later, humans have become cannibals, hunting and eating each other to stay alive. Amid all this, a father takes his son, Jake, out hunting. Unlike others, they still hold on to their humanity, choosing to hunt animals instead of people. During their hunt, the father spots a wild boar, takes aim, and shoots it with an arrow. The boar runs off, wounded, and the two follow its blood trail, but the animal escapes into an area where it's impossible to track, leaving them disappointed. As they head back, they spot a little girl's muddy shoes lying near an abandoned car. Curious, Jake and his father decide to search the car. Inside, Jake finds a packet of biscuits and starts eating them without telling his dad. Suddenly, they hear noises outside. The father rushes into the car, and together, they watch a pack of wild dogs pass by. Luckily, the dogs don't notice them hiding inside. After the danger passes, they return to their shelter, a place that barely looks like a home, covered with heavy wooden planks to keep wild animals out. Inside, a sick girl named Hannah lies on a bed, her stomach wound badly infected. The next morning, Jake steps outside to freshen up when he hears someone approaching. He races back to warn his father, who wakes up to the noise. They see strangers moving toward their shelter. Without wasting time, they grab essentials like Hannah's medicine, stuff them into a bag, and escape through the back door. Hannah can't walk, so the father hides Jake and her in a sewage gutter, then confronts the attackers alone. But the hunters are ruthless, and he's quickly overpowered and killed. Jake and Hannah watch helplessly as the hunters hang his father's body like slaughtered prey and take the medicine bag. After the hunters leave, Jake notices a cookie wrapper on the ground, the same one from the car. He realizes the whole thing was a trap. Guilt crashes over him. If he had told his dad about the cookies, maybe they would have avoided this. Now his family is shattered. He takes Hannah back to their shelter, only to find it wrecked. Hannah's infection has worsened from hiding in the gutter, and she collapses with a high fever. Jake knows she'll die without medicine, now in the hunter's hands. Determined, he leaves supplies and water by her bed, boards up the shelter to keep animals out, and sets off in just a t-shirt and shorts, the only clothes he has left, to track the hunters. He ties rags around his feet for warmth, praying Hannah stays safe and doesn't try to follow. Jake tries to follow his father's blood trail to track down the hunters, but the freezing cold wind outside is so harsh that he gives up. He curls up on the ground, shivering. Suddenly, he spots a small boy nearby who lives in a warehouse with his grandpa. Seeing the boy feels like a flicker of hope, so Jake starts chasing him. But the boy panics when he notices Jake following him, runs back inside, slams the door shut, and hides with his grandpa. Jake follows him to the warehouse and tries to open the door. After struggling for a while, he finally kicks it open, breaking it down. The grandpa and the boy are terrified, thinking Jake is a hunter. But Jake just needs warm clothes to survive the cold. He walks in, grabs a pair of pants lying around, and tries to snatch the grandpa's jacket. The boy tries to stop him, but Jake shoves him aside, takes the jacket, and even steals a pair of shoes before leaving. Back outside, Jake starts following his father's blood trail again, but it leads to a dead end. The hunters had already cooked and eaten his father. Jake finds his dad's bones scattered there, which makes him vomit and break down crying. He collects the bones and buries them in the ground. With no clues left to track the hunters, Jake decides to take revenge. He climbs a tree to spot their hideout and sees smoke rising in the distance, coming from the hunters' camp. Suddenly, Jake slips and falls. The noise attracts wild dogs, who start closing in on him. He tries to run, but can barely stand, so he crawls to the spot where his father was burned. Using the last embers left in the ashes, he lights a fire. Just as the dogs approach, the flames scare them off, saving Jake's life. By morning, Jake moves forward and spots a tent. To check if anyone's inside, he throws a stone at it. When no one responds, he cautiously enters. The sight shocks him. 2 dried-up skeletons lie there, likely dead from hunger and thirst. He finds their leftover supplies: an empty water bottle, a matchbox with a few sticks left, a knife, and a whistle. Jake takes everything and leaves. Outside, he sees the same boy again, probably out searching for food. The boy runs away in fear. Jake then heads to the hunter's camp but finds it empty. They're out hunting. Only the hunter's wife is there. Jake sneaks up behind her with a large rock. The hunters had set up a rope with bells around their camp to alert them of intruders, but Jake carefully avoids tripping it. Inside, Jake searches through bags but can't find Hannah's medicine. Suddenly, the huntress sneaks up behind him with an axe. Jake spots her in a mirror and fights back, but she overpowers him. In desperation, he smashes a rock into her head, killing her instantly. Frantically, he cleans up the blood and hides her body, worried the hunters will return. While doing this, he finds a water bottle and keeps it. He hasn't had a drink in days. Still searching for the medicine, Jake hears the hunters returning. He knows if they find the huntress's body, he'll be in even bigger trouble, and Hannah will never get her medicine. Panicking, he keeps looking, but time is running out. Jake hides behind a tree with the dead body. Meanwhile, his axe falls to the ground nearby. From behind the tree, he watches as the hunters return, with the same little boy he'd seen earlier, now captured and about to be cooked. But Jake doesn't care about the boy. He barely knows him. All he wants is Hannah's medicine, which one of the hunters, a straggler, is now using for his own infected wound. The straggler tosses the medicine into an outdoor crate. Their leader walks toward the tree, but Jake stays perfectly quiet and hidden, avoiding detection. Suddenly, the hunter's lieutenant finds Jake's axe, and the group spreads out, realizing someone's nearby. While they search, Jake seizes his chance. He covers the body with dry leaves, crawls toward the crate, and passes a donkey cart filled with human bones. By then, only the straggler remains outside, and he soon goes inside. Jake sneaks over to free the tied-up boy, but the kid screams in fear, alerting the straggler. By the time the straggler rushes out, the boy escapes, and Jake slips away unnoticed. Jake reaches the crate, but it's locked. He can't break it open or carry it. He's just a kid. Hearing the hunters return, he hides under a trailer. The hunters rage over the boy's escape and blame the straggler. In his fury, the leader kills the straggler. He then notices dirt on the crate's lock, realizing it's been tampered with. To make things worse, the hunters find the huntress's body. Jake worries they'll eat her, but instead, they perform funeral rites. During this, Jake spots the crate's key hanging around the leader's neck. The hunters go inside after burning the huntress's body, but the leader stays behind, boiling with anger. Meanwhile, Hannah's condition worsens. The water Jake left her is gone, and survival feels impossible. At dawn, Jake crawls into the trailer, lights a match from the tent supplies, and spots the leader. Using his knife, he carefully cuts the key from the leader's neck. He unlocks the crate, finding preserved food, and finally grabs the medicine. He locks the crate again to buy time, but forgets about the bell alarm. As he runs, his foot hits the rope, ringing the bells and waking the hunters. They chase him, but the leader limps behind. Jake barely escapes, stumbling back to the warehouse where the boy and his grandpa lived, only to find the boy missing and the grandpa eaten by wild dogs. Guilt washes over Jake. If he hadn't broken into the warehouse, the dogs might have never gotten in. As he moves on, the hunters catch up. One swings an axe at Jake's head, knocking him out. When he wakes, they're preparing to cook him. Spotting a knife nearby, Jake tries to reach it, but the leader kicks it away and burns Jake's father's photo. Desperate, Jake grabs the knife, blows the whistle, and attracts a pack of wild dogs, his last hope for survival. Seeing the dogs, the hunters ditch Jake and bolt to save their own skins. Meanwhile, Jake manages to cut the rope binding his hands with the knife and quickly hides to avoid the dogs. On the other side, a hunter named Lover can't run fast because of an injured leg. The leader, who also has trouble walking, intentionally injures Lover's leg further, leaving him for the dogs to eat while he escapes. Now, only 3 hunters remain in their group: the leader, the lieutenant, and Charger. They return to where they left Jake, but he's already gone. The lieutenant spots bloodstains and follows them straight to Jake. But this is all part of Jake's trap. A fight breaks out between them, and Jake stabs the lieutenant to death. He then swaps his jacket with the lieutenant's to trick Charger, who falls for it. And Jake kills him too. Jake puts on Charger's clothes to blend in, grabs his bow and arrow, and takes aim at the leader. His first shot misses, sparking a brutal fight between them. Just then, the wild dogs return. Jake escapes, but the leader becomes their prey. Jake runs until he reaches a mountain, where he finds a cottage. Outside, a man's body hangs from a noose. A suicide. Inside, Jake spots a revolver. He drinks some water from a supply there, fills a bottle, and starts gathering food. Then, suddenly, the leader appears. But how? Didn't the dogs kill him? Turns out, the leader had outsmarted them. Jake points the revolver at him but realizes it's empty. They wrestle, and the leader gains the upper hand, until Jake grabs the leader's own gun and shoots him dead. Exhausted, Jake races back to his shelter. His heart stops when he finds the gate open and Hannah missing. Thinking the worst, He sits down and breaks into tears until Hannah quietly places a hand on his shoulder.
If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to Movie Story for more amazing movie recaps. Let us know in the comments which movie you'd like us to cover next. Thank you for watching, and see you in the next one.